God, the words that we said was here and now. These are the words that we say to you, that we are here. God, and we desire for you to reveal your presence now. For God, as your children, this is our longing, that we long to see you face to face. We long to be able to encounter your presence. We long to be able to hear from you. Because God, this is the reason why we worship you. This is the reason why we glorify you, Lord, because that is our desire. And so God, we say, here we are now. We invite you to come here now as well. And so, Lord, the words that we say to you are simple. Jesus, please come. Holy Spirit, please come. Fill this room. Fill each and every single one of us. For we long to encounter you and to hear your voice. So, Holy Spirit, we invite you just to have your way today. Reveal your heart to us. Speak to us. Give us wisdom, revelation, and discernment. For this is our desire, Lord. This is why we gather to worship you. God, I pray for myself. May I not simply be a speaker of your word. God, you know that is easy. I pray, God, that may I wholeheartedly do your words. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. There's a company in Japan that's called Family Romance. It's a very interesting company. In fact, when I tell you what it is, most of you will laugh. Because what this company is, it is a bunch of actors that is designed to be hired out for anyone who desires a relationship. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't mean just relationship as a pretend boyfriend, but I'm talking about relationships of all spectrum. That you can hire actors to play the role of a baby. Real baby, not adult playing a baby. But you can actually hire a baby and pretend that it's your baby, and you could cuddle it and you can hold it in your hand just to get an experience of relating to a baby. Not only can you hire a baby, but you can even have an actor play your grandpa or your grandma. You can have an actor play your husband or your wife or your brother or your sister or some type of friend. Interesting company, isn't it? That you can hire people to be in a relationship with. Such an interesting concept. In fact, the CEO of the company have said he's played many different roles. He has played the role of a husband in a wedding, that they mock this wedding so that this woman can show to all of her friends and her parents that she was getting married. But little the people in the audience knew that it was a fake, it was a sham. All he did was play a 2-hour role just to show what it looked like to be married. Or that he has played the role of a parent, of a father. That the kids will come home and he will go into their home and be like a father to the kids. And the kids will have never known that he's not their real father. Interesting. And the CEO went and said this. He said, we live in a society that's isolated, that is private. And a lot of times we do not have the means or the energy in wanting to develop relationships. So we feel alone. And so he says that the premise of his company is so that people, regardless of where they're at in life and regardless of what type of relationship they're looking for, they can have the experience of being in a relationship. He says that this phenomenon is taking storm in Japan and that one day it may even come to the U.S. It's interesting that each and every single one of us as human beings, we long to be in a relationship. And what I mean in a relationship, I don't simply mean to find a significant other. That we long to be in community with people, that we long to somehow be in relationship with people, whether it's friends, whether it's family. We all have that longing for community. You would think that with the advancement of modern technology, that it will bring the world so much more closer together, and that as the world is so much more closer together, we will have more friends. Most of us will say, well, I have a lot of friends. Check my Facebook page. I have over 1,300 friends on my Facebook. Some of you probably have more, and some of you may have less. In fact, a recent study says this, that the average person who is on Facebook has about 150 friends on their Facebook page. And as they have about 150 friends in their Facebook page, they said that about 28 people on their quote-unquote 150 people that they have listed as friends, they will consider low-level friends. They did another research and statistics studies. They asked these group of people, if you were in crisis or if you were in danger or something wrong with you, how many of these friends would actually come and help? And all of them came back with the same answer. It averaged out to about 4. That 4 people in your Facebook friends will actually help out. The good news is that about 14 others will feel empathy. What this tells us that even with the development of modern technology, we live in a world where relationships are far and few. That we are designed for community. We are designed for friendship. But yet in the world that has supposedly brought the world closer together, what it really has done is has driven a wedge. In fact, one of the important parts when we think about the gospel is that the gospel is best relayed through relationships. And most of us do not realize that. And so if we want to engage the world, if we want to share our faith with people in this world, it needs to be relayed through relationships. And so our sermon series, Engage, the Kingdom Mandate, it is a sermon series designed to help us to understand what it means to share the gospel, what it means to engage the world. It is to remind us of the calling that Christ has given to every single believer. And not only is this sermon series designed to remind us, but it is also designed to help us to give skills in how do we engage the world with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So please look with me to Mark chapter 2, verse 1 through 5. It's a story that each and every single one of us are very familiar with. It reads, "A few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. They gathered in such large numbers that there were no room left, even outside the door. And he preached the word to them. Some men came, bringing to him a paralyzed man, carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it and then lowered the mat that the man was laying on. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, 'Son, your sins are forgiven.'" Quite an interesting story. In fact, the context of this story takes place, according to Mark, that before Jesus went back into his home in Capernaum, he healed a blind man. He healed somebody. Another healing took place. And so Jesus now has entered into Capernaum. Capernaum is basically where Jesus is home base, you can say. So people in Capernaum know who Jesus is. And by this time, when Jesus has returned back to Capernaum, he had reached the status of celebrity. He's become a superstar. And so now there's a crowd beginning to follow him because Jesus is a superstar now. No longer is he just that guy from Nazareth, but now he is Jesus, the superstar, the celebrity, the one that everybody wants to see and everybody wants to check out. So here it is, Jesus comes back to Capernaum, and everybody knows that Jesus is back because people have heard stories. Guess what? This man can heal the sick. This man, when he speaks, watch out, because he's got power in those words. His teaching is phenomenal. And so everybody knew that Jesus was back. And so everybody began to huddle around in the house that Jesus was in. Most likely it could have been probably Peter's house. And so here it is. We get this scene. It's quite a hilarious scene when we think about it. Jesus is in the home and he's teaching. And guess who are there? There's some there who are spectators, and some who are there are spies. In fact, we are told later on in the verses that the teachers of law were already in there first, and they were seated to hear Jesus speak. And so Jesus is teaching, and this crowd is beginning to amass. And so usually the houses in Jesus' days, at max, there was probably 50 people can fit in their standing room, shoulder to shoulder, sardine style, like you would if you were on the train. And so you already get this image that Jesus is either sitting or standing, and then you have these teachers of law sitting in the front row, listening and waiting to catch every single word that he says so that they can write them down or whatever and begin to get them. And then you have other people who are curious. And so they're packed in the house like a sardine can, and everybody knew that Jesus is in town, and they want to hear or see it. You know how it happens, the bandwagon effect. And so the bandwagon effect is beginning to go on, and you have all this group of people now. Not only are they sardine can in the house, but they're surrounding the door and the whole entrance, and they're probably surrounding the house, and there's a crowd that's there, and people are nodding and trying to lift their toes up to see, and we're told that all of a sudden, there's this man who has been paralyzed that wants to see Jesus. That there's this man that is paralyzed that wants to see Jesus because he heard of Jesus' healing miracles. He wanted to encounter Jesus because what he wanted healing for his body. But if you know anything about being paralyzed, you have no hope of moving around. We don't know much about this paralyzed man, except we don't know if he was born paralyzed or maybe he had an accident. But there's probably one thing we do know, that if he wanted to survive and if he wanted to have food to live every single day, he was probably outside the town of Capernaum by the roadside, day in and day out begging for food. But luckily, this man had friends. Now, it's amazing, first of all, a man who is paralyzed, who is unclean, had friends. Because if you're a good Jewish person, who would want to relate with somebody who's unclean? They're the sinners. You don't want to relate with them because then guess what? You'll be considered a sinner as well. So maybe he had a bunch of sinners too that cared for this friend. And so we see this scene that they have this man on a mat. They probably carried him all the way from outside of town so that they can meet with Jesus, that this man can meet with Jesus. The man who was paralyzed was desperate. He knew that he was hopeless and that there was and he longed for restoration. He longed for completion. He longed for healing to take place in his body. That's all he wanted. But he had 4 friends that was willing to get him there. And so these 4 friends are carrying, I bet you the scene, they're going and they're wondering, oh my goodness, let's get there. And to their surprise, they see this huge crowd in front of the door. And I'm sure as they're carrying, they go, we got this. This is such a huge obstacle. It's there. And so they're trying to ask people, excuse me, can you move? We really need to get in there. And people are like, no, you find your own space. It doesn't matter, but our friend needs help. I don't care if your friend needs help. We're here. We got here first. You wait back in the line. Whatever it was, there was an obstacle place. I want to kind of backtrack a little bit of this. Most of us, when we think about sharing our faith to our friends, when we see an obstacle, we turn right back. Most of us, when we see an obstacle before us, we turn right back. Oh yeah, my friend, they'll never want to hear anything about Jesus. They don't want to go to church. Every time I talk about, they make fun of me when I pray. They're going to think weird of me if I even begin to share that Jesus loves you. And so every time, most of us, when we see an obstacle, we turn right back. But there's something amazing about these 4 friends. They didn't turn back. In fact, they probably tried many times in trying to get, because in their mind, these 4 friends knew that if they got this man before Jesus, something was going to happen. And that as their friend, they were absolutely determined to make sure that this man, who was desperate in need of healing, needed to get before Jesus, needed to encounter Jesus. And so they saw the obstacle before them. Maybe their friend said, oh, it's okay, forget it. Life will never get better for me. It's okay. Thank you for trying. Somehow, these 4 friends were absolutely determined. Because you got to be absolutely determined to do what they did. Right? In the houses in Jesus' days, it was basically like a one-room structure, and there was a roof, and there was a walkway up. So up there was also kind of like a living area where you bathe and etc. And so these friends were determined. They went up the roof. Now you're wondering, why the heck would you go up the roof? There is no stairwell going from the roof into the house. They knew that the roof was there. But they went up anyway. And they did something that is mind-blowing. They went up to the roof, even though the roof itself was an obstacle. They began to dig a hole. Imagine the scene inside the house. Jesus is teaching, and all of a sudden you hear like scratching, and then all of a sudden you hear the stomping noise. And as Jesus is speaking things, and you got the teachers of the law, probably the dust is falling on their head and things are going crazy. And then all of a sudden Jesus is teaching, all you get is dust, dirt falling down, straw, whatever is falling down, and all of a sudden you see this giant hole. I'm sure everybody has stopped in the track and go, oh my goodness, this building is going to collapse. But instead of the building collapse, it's almost like you see the scene out in the movies that this body is being lowered down. Right in front of Jesus. And then Jesus said this in verse 5. He saw their faith. And he said, Son, your sins are forgiven. Let me repeat that. He saw their faith. And he said to the man who was paralyzed, Son, your sins are forgiven. Jesus didn't say to the paralyzed, I see your faith. I see you really want to get well. Jesus saw the faith of his friends as well. It's amazing that the faith of other people can close the distance and remove the obstacle of a person encountering Jesus. That's mind-blowing. What that basically means that my faith, your faith, can remove the obstacles that our friends have when it comes to encountering Jesus. That it wasn't just this man's individual act alone. But this paralyzed man who is helpless, who couldn't help himself. And that's a lot of our friends who do not believe in Jesus. That they can't help themselves. They're struggling, they're broken, and they're still in the midst of their brokenness, and they can't help themselves. How do you expect someone who can't help themselves to go to Jesus? It's not going to happen. It's amazing. But this man had friends. And not only does this man have friends, but he had friends who had faith that if they brought him to Jesus, something was going to happen. So most of us, we talk a lot about sharing faith and speaking the truth and the gospel to people, but most of us, when we face obstacles and things like that, we lose faith. And we just simply forget it and we just move on. We say to ourselves, oh, this person will never be saved. This person will never get it. Once we see any ounce of resistance, we turn around and we leave. That will make us not very good friends. Wouldn't it? You know, I'm old school. I come from a school of thought that says, if you really consider somebody your friend, don't leave them behind. I'm old school in that when you really consider somebody your friend, you do something about it to help them. Maybe it's just me. But shouldn't friendship mean something? Shouldn't friendship mean that we have that type of commitment to people? That's what friends are. And for those of us who believe in Jesus and we know the truth and the truth has set us free, and we want to engage the world, but guess what? To engage the world, it's going to take persistency on our part. Because guess what? The person is not going to be able to come to Christ on their own. It's going to require somebody of faith to have faith that is persistent, that's not going to be afraid of the obstacles. Bring the person before Jesus. Most of us have friends that are lost. We have friends that they're broken. They have so much junk and they have so much issues in their life. They have so many problems, and they don't even know it too. Some of them, that's scary. They don't even know it. But if you ask people, it doesn't matter how old they are, whatever walk of life they are, if you ask them if they want their problems to be solved, if you ask them if they want their brokenness to be relieved, If everybody would say yes, then you can be able to do it. It's going to require people faith in here and now. We need to carry them. And even when we do carry them, we engage them and we try to love them, and we're going to face obstacles. Most of us quit when we see obstacles. We'll say, this person's not worth it. Too hard. We just pray for them. It's a Christian way of saying, I give up. But if we want to engage the world, if we want the gospel to penetrate into people's life, it's not just about talking about it. It's about having faith that God will remove every single obstacle laid before us. Because Jesus saw the faith also of the poor. He didn't just see that the person needed healing. He saw the faith of these poor friends. Saw their faith. And for most of us, if we're not making progress in sharing our faith with people, then we have to ask ourselves the question: is our faith big enough? Or are we just simply blinded by the obstacle before us? If we want the gospel to penetrate to our friends, our family, to the people around us, to our neighbors, to our neighborhood, to our community, we're going to see a lot of obstacles. We're going to see a lot of roadblocks. We're going to see a lot of resistance. Resistance will come because of distance, whatever, people, natural circumstances. Those obstacles, if we're looking through the eyes of doubt, we'll see like a mountain. Those 4 friends went up to the roof. And they just knew that somehow, if I could bring my friend before the feet of Jesus, something would happen. If somehow I could just bring them to the feet of Jesus, Jesus will encounter this person and something amazing will take place. Because of that, they began to dig. They began to dig, they began to pound, they began to rip. So the obstacle will be removed so that their friends will be brought before the feet of Jesus. So, what type of friend are we? The people around us. Are we Facebook friends with them? Are we the type of friends that have empathy when we hear that they're not doing well? Or are we one of those 4 friends that actually do something about it? Our faith, our relationship with Jesus requires that we actually do something about it. Because this is what Jesus has called us to do. Jesus says, as the Father has sent me, I'm sending you. We need to have faith that is persistent, that just doesn't see obstacles, but sees this. And if this person is brought before Jesus, things will happen. There's a story of a man digging a hole through a mountain. It took him 14 years, but he dug a hole through a mountain because it took too long to go around the mountain. And so every single day of his life, for 14 years, he dug a hole with a chisel and a hammer. Every single day he just... because he knew all he needed to do was get to the other side. Guess what? He was motivated because somebody else had dug another hole because it was too long for him to get his wife to the hospital. And because of his wife died, he didn't want that for other people. And so he dug a hole as well through another mountain to get to the hospital. And so if you and I want to really engage the world, we just talk. Isn't just saying, I'm going to share my faith with my friends. It means that we actually literally have to do something about it. It means that we actually have to roll up our sleeve and get involved in a person's life. To carry them even when they can't stand. To help them to overcome the obstacles that they face before they can get to Jesus. And not to allow the obstacles cause fear in us. But to be persistent in overcoming the obstacles because we believe that this person, if this person encounters Jesus, something will happen in their life. This person is our friend. That we care enough to do something. When I look at the church, I'll say most churches believe they care. The reality is we don't care enough. Because when we see obstacles, we just turn right around. Jesus saw their faith. And because of their faith, Jesus said to the man who needed Jesus, Son, sins are forgiven. Have faith and do that for you. I'm going to invite the worship team to come up. If statistics are right, it basically says we have 4 friends that we care about. It basically says that we have friends that we actually will care about and do something about it in their life. If we don't, then I would say you've been living in church too long because all your friends are Christian. And guess what? You're living in the Great Wall. And living out your own little dream of just glorifying God. But in reality, living in disobedience. Because the Father has sent me, I have sent him. So, if we have friends, guess what? Our friends are broken. They desperately need Jesus. If we have family members who don't know Jesus, guess what? They're broken. If you have neighbors, guess what? They are broken and they desperately need Jesus. Guess what? The workplace that you work in, there are people there who are broken, who desperately need Jesus. Guess what? The neighborhood that you live in, it is desperately broken and it needs Jesus as well. And it's only going to happen for them to encounter Jesus if we have faith that is persistent. That we're not going to see obstacles only, but that we're going to see that our God is greater than all of this and that He can do something about it. You can see that. Imagine people who imagine the brokenness that they have. Imagine pain and sorrow. And we allow our faith to carry them to Jesus. It's very obvious. They are unable to do so themselves. Imagine their lives radically changing because they meet Jesus. Imagine your workplace radically change because a few people encounter Jesus. Imagine your neighbors radically change because they encounter Jesus. They no longer will play loud music in the middle of the night because they know that's not the Christian thing to do. Imagine your neighborhood changing because they encounter Jesus, because they know that doesn't honor Jesus. All of that will change if we have faith. Let's persist in that. Because the gospel is best relayed through relationship.